the Desert Tiger Podcast.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey!
Hi. How's it going today, Kathy?
Oh man, it's like just the normal, like what else can happen, this kind of stuff. It's okay. I'm actually applying to an MFA program at graduate school, and that means I have to give them a bunch of stories, and I'm just going crazy because I want it to be my best writing I can give. And I feel like I'm having like huge imposter syndrome and like, who do you think you are? And blah, blah, blah. Same old stuff.
Well, I mean, you're Kathy Valentine of the Go-Go's,
I
a
know, but
working musician of 40
I'm not
years.
applying to be a rocker chick in a band. I'm applying for a writing program.
Oh, well, you're also a published author, so I mean,
Yeah, I am.
it's some really incredible stories. So I mean, you should feel good about the opportunity that possibly exists in the future here.
I do. It's writing fiction, short stories and stuff. It's just it's a whole other thing.
Oh, definitely a whole other world than the book that you have released here in 2020 last year.
Absolutely. I mean, I wrote that really confident that I was a good writer. So I need to just start approaching my fiction the same way. Sometimes just the attitude of like, hey, I'm good at this. I can do this.
Well, and it's just like music too, as practice helps you learn and progress and grow.
And that's why I want to take the class. I want to be a really good writer. I mean, that's what I would like to do. I know that I'm a good musician and good in a band, but this is kind of a fun, challenging, new dimension to my career, what I leave behind, how I spend my time. So, yeah. Okay.
Still progressing into new things even far into your career, which is wonderful.
I think so. I mean, to me, it's part of the message I like to put out is that, as we get older, I think some people get very comfortable with what they do or set in their ways or whatever. And to me, that feels old. I don't want to feel old. I didn't become a mom till I was almost 44. So, I want to be around a long time. I don't want to be like some old granny that can't, figure out how to use my phone,
For sure. And you're, like you said, you're a mother later on, but you're still progressing, and you were a student before this course from what I've seen in my research as well. So you've constantly just expanding and growing.
Yeah, I try to. It's like, I mean, I'm always a musician at heart. That's my core identity. I feel like I'm a working musician. I've been in bands for 45 years, but a lot of what I do doesn't get the audience and the recognition that the Go-Go's did, which is awesome. I'm super grateful and blessed, and that's opened so many doors and given me so much. But at the same time, it's not all that I can do and that I have done and that I'm capable of. So it's fun to go outside of music and find something else I'm good at and try to make my mark in another way.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive into all I ever wanted here. Your first introduction into being a published author. So what inspired you to actually take the step into the world of writing?
Well, like I was saying, I wanted to add to my career legacy. It's like everything I feel like I'm really known for happened a long time ago, and it's still lasting. The Go-Go's have an amazing legacy. It's unbelievable. But, I was 22, 23, and I've done a lot since then. I've played in a lot of great bands. I've made a lot of good music. I've produced things. I've done a lot of stuff, but that's been where my validation or recognition has come. And I kind of just felt like, I want to have something else. I don't mean to be greedy or anything, but I don't want the whole sum of my capabilities to be in this small area, in this big thing in a small place. You know what I'm saying? So I felt like I could write well. I felt like I had a compelling story. That I was sure of. I have talked to enough people. I've read enough books. I've read enough memoirs that I knew I had a good story and it was compelling. And I really approached it as a literary memoir, more than a rock music memoir. Although, because the time frame that I write about includes me joining the Go-Go's and becoming a musician and our rise to the top and our breaking up, it is very much a music book and a rock memoir, but it's so much more. It's kind of really straddles the two genres of memoir writing, which one is like, you know, a lot of people I know, I didn't know this till I wrote it, but a lot of people, that's their thing. That's their jam, is reading music memoirs, right? I didn't know that. That's what they dig. And they'll just read any book that any musician puts out. That's what they like. But I wasn't like that. I like literary memoirs. I like a lot of other writers. So those were my templates more, but I just happen to have this super cool band in my story as well.
Like you said, it's the Go-Go's achieved a lot of success. Some of that success has yet to be achieved again, but it was a 5-year period of your life, if that. And there's so much more to life than a 5-year period. And you definitely covered a very vast timeline from your youth, growing up with your mother in this book, your time with the Go-Go's, and even some of the past, or like of what came after the Go-Go's as well. So it's very eye-opening, and you get very vulnerable and open and honest. So what was it like to go through some of these emotions, probably for the first time in a long time?
Well, it was very, it was emotional for sure. It was very healing. It was a way of processing that I had never done. I mean, I've done therapy. I've been sober. I've certainly spent enough time on my evolution as a human where I would have thought that maybe I had dived in a lot to this stuff. But no, there's nothing like writing it and putting all these fragments and all these things and putting it on the page and making this big picture where it all kind of falls into place. And anything that was still sitting there, still hurting a lot, putting it in as a part of the big picture really was kind of soothing and helpful. So I like to say it was the most intensive, extensive, and cheapest therapy I've ever had.
As someone who's been through therapy, yeah, I can understand that comparison for sure. That's hilarious. I love that. Okay, so one thing that I also really love about this book, because like normally I'm a slow reader and I crushed through like the first 71 pages of this book too, before I even realized there was an audio companion that came along with it. So at what point along this did you decide you were going to do an audio companion along to the novel? Was this something that you sort of figured since you were a musician it was just natural to do the whole way through, or was this something just along the way you're like, oh hey, I've got a groove in my head, let's do this?
It was a combination of things. Number one, I'm very strategic always. I'm always trying to, I think a lot of my success has to do with strategizing and seeing where my opportunities are and seeing what I'm good at and seeing when I'm not good at something. And so I started thinking towards the end of the book, it wasn't in my mind all through it, but I started thinking, what can I do to set myself apart from other writers that are putting books out? What can I do that other writers can't? I can write music. Why not have a soundtrack to the book? What a cool idea. Why doesn't every musician do that? So there was that aspect. And then another which fed into like, it's another way to bring attention. Not everybody has noticed, or people that do, they're like, wow, this is super cool. So I knew it would be an addition, a plus, especially because I think I did a really good job, and I'm highly critical of my output and my work. And for me to feel that proud and feel like it's that good is saying something. And ultimately, that's who I aim to please. It's great if other people think that, but if I think it, it's kind of you get used to, that's enough. But there was also, I was missing music. I mean, I worked on this book for pretty much 3 years, and I went through a lot of doubt and wanting to give up and procrastination and thinking I couldn't do it, and trying to figure it out and what to leave in and what to take out. And, I mean, I went through a lot writing this book, and I was dying to get back into making music. I couldn't wait. I mean, I have a rock and roll band in Austin, but I also have a little home studio that I love just kind of, being creative in. So there was those two things. Partly it was like, this is cool. Why don't more people do this? This is going to set me and my book a little bit apart from the other books. Not every writer can write music. Not every songwriter can write a book. So I felt like I was creating a little space that I could occupy in a good way. So there was that. And there was also, I couldn't wait to make music. And this gave me an entire book to draw from, a lot of, just like probably an artist that sits down with a canvas. Like, I've tried to be a painter, and I'm like, what do I paint? Do I paint a picture of a flower? What do I do? Like, figuring out what to do is so part of the deal with creating something. So it's the same with writing songs. Oh, what am I going to write about? Oh, this hurts, or this was this or that. I'll write about that. But I had a whole book. Like, I could just open the book and go, oh, this was intense. I'm going to write a music to it.
It's never done in Clubland. It's all going on. This Clubland is Mecca. Movies in real life won't keep us together. We play like Godhead. We got that turban, the other with the gold tooth. Right through that magic door. I don't wanna hump you. Oh. I wanna be like you. At night I move through Clubland with precise timing, like gear shifting from one place to the next. Catch the Bowie cover set at the Rock Club, head over to T-Birds and Antone's, finish up with some dancing at the Split Rail. School was in session, and it was the best education I could ask for. Girls singing songs and then wrote about girls. Singing songs, then write about girls, girls, girls. Singing songs, then write about girls. Singing songs, then write about girls, girls, girls. Singing songs, then write about girls. I nearly fell over. These rock stars, they were homegrown. Didn't push the jelly roll. Followed them all around town. Platform boots, big sunglasses, the right head of hair. Couldn't throw shapes, but I really didn't care. Less drugs, less drinking, less sex. The only thing I wanted from a guy was for him to sit still a minute and show me something cool on the guitar.
And one thing that I really enjoy about that too is how it opens up the like the chapters of a book to a whole other energy where like the book, it's written as if like it's almost as if we're in the room with you and we can feel what you're feeling, which is one thing I love about it. But the music definitely helps to give it a different energy, which is something that I definitely love about the dimension of that as well.
Thank you. I think so too. And I really, it was felt so creative. I mean, I came out of doing that soundtrack pretty impressed with myself because I wasn't just making a solo record. I've never really wanted to be a solo artist. I like being just in a band, you know, I don't want to be the star. But so that kind of limits me, that my whole career, I'm kind of limited by being a supporting person. But with this, it wasn't like, oh, I'm making a solo record. I got to be the best singer and the best. It was like, I'm bringing this book to life. And it took a lot of that pressure off. You know, I didn't have to be a great singer. Every song didn't have to be perfect and sound like a hit song. What it had to do was bring the book, the chapter that I was putting music to, bring it to life, capture the tone, capture the energy, capture, if I could, the emotions. I mean, some of it is really sad. You know, the song, Just Do It, that I wrote as an accompaniment to the chapter, Just Do It, and they all coincide.
Very heavy.
I cried writing that song. I cried for 3 days. I mourned and I grieved. It was like for the first time, I was 14 and nobody was looking out for me. And I was just kind of out there in the world being abused and it just made me sad. It was like the first time, and even writing about it, I was like, oh, this sucks. I was raped. So I'm like writing it. But when I did the music, it was like it took it so much deeper. And I remember my daughter was out of town and I picked her up from the airport and I was just crying. And she's like, Mom, what's wrong? Why are you so sad? This was like day 2. And I told her, I said, you know, I wrote about being raped when I was 14 and I'm writing the music to it. And it's just made me so sad. And yet at the same time, I'm so grateful that you haven't had to have things like this happen to you. So yeah, super heavy, super heavy. And now, not just to give the impression that it's a big downer, there's also super like just rockin' tracks and the one about my dad, like who wasn't in my life and coming up and saying he was wrong and I'd done really well. And the chapter is called Next to Merle because he said, I got your Go-Go's record right next to my Merle Haggard. I took that chapter and did the music to that. And I called it Next to Merle because I always use the same title of the chapter. But that one I kind of made a little bit more country. I've never been in a band that's played anything remotely like country music. So, and it's not like a country song, but it's kind of rootsy. It's got a lap steel that I didn't play, but everything else I did play. And it was fun. And like I do a track called Clubland, which is about me in the clubs in the early 70s and like just seeing all these bands. And that one was super fun because I like just it started sounding like 70s kind of like soul music. And I'm like, where'd that come from? I don't know, but I'm going to go with it. I had a blast. As you can tell, I had a blast doing the soundtrack. And it's actually led me, it was just so creative, so interesting, what an interesting way to make music. You know, I can use all the tools that I've learned as a songwriter, you know, hooks and catchy choruses and cool grooves and riffs and this and that and structure, and I can use it or not use it, you know, I could just make like a bass groove with a cool beat with like just something almost spoken word on top of it. So I would love for in my future to do a collection of literary short stories and have each short story have a soundtrack to it. I love doing it. It's my thing now. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do more.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. This book is a very compelling read, and I can only wait to see and hear what other things you possibly might create in the future, what other possible adventures you might take us on in the world of fiction and otherwise.
I also do want to do another memoir at some point. It won't be the next book because I don't want to, like I said, I strategize. I'm like, if I just go right into another memoir, to me, it feels like that's all she can do. And, oh, wow, she thinks she's so fascinating that all she needs to do is sit around and write books about herself. So I don't want it to be like that. But also it would be very different. But it's a really different journey. That my book stops in 1990 and it follows a really classical story arc. A lot of people are like, why didn't you talk about this? And why didn't you talk about that? And this happened. And because it wasn't an autobiography. It wasn't the Go-Go's history. It was a story of a girl, very rare in that time and era, who found rock and roll, who was saved by it, who chased a dream and got it and then lost it all and lost herself and had to come, so that's the story. That was the story I wanted to write. But the next memoir would be a whole different journey. And I will do that, God willing, if I live enough.
Well, and you do hint towards the fact that there is much more to be told in Epilogue a Go-Go as well.
Yeah, and I also put not the end. So that's kind of like, woohoo.
Well, I mean, hey, there's still 30 more years to be covered of adventures and otherwise. Like, you've been an actor. The Go-Go's went to Broadway. You recently had a documentary release. The Go-Go's recently released a new single in 2020. There's still a lot going on inside of your world.
Oh, no. And we had a lawsuit in 1995 where we broke up again. I was kicked out of the band in 2011 or 12 for 4 years. That was ugly. So there's a lot of Go-Go shit, and there's a lot of personal shit. There's a lot more to this story that I think people would like the next book too. But like I said, that's down the road.
Awesome. Down the road for sure. Before I ask my last question, Kathy, where can the listeners, The Ambush, find out more about Kathy Valentine, and where can they go to find themselves a copy of All I Ever Wanted?
Okay, well, I'm very active on social media, especially Twitter seems to be my favorite. So I'm Kathy_Valentine. I love hearing from people. I love engaging. I don't have like my social media person doing it for me. I don't have a social media person, I should say. And Instagram, Kathy.Valentine. Facebook, I'm there, not as much. I kind of just say, hey, this is happening, or look at this. I don't engage as much then. It's more of a moral thing. And I have a great website, but I'm so busy that it doesn't always get updated as much as I would like, but it's still worth looking at because it's beautiful. So that's KathyValentine.com. As far as my book, and I'm on, I have a lot of solo music and the soundtrack on Spotify, and Bandcamp is my favorite, and the other usual outlets. And what else can I tell you? What else? The book, I always say, if you can, order it from a indie bookstore, because like all small businesses, they are suffering. But if you can't find one, or if they don't have it, please go ahead and order it from any behemoth that will get it to you. And there's also an audio book that you can get that was released from Hachette Audiobooks, and that has the soundtrack integrated into it. So you will be hearing me tell you the story. A lot of people love the audio. I don't listen to audiobooks myself, so I just did it and didn't think about it. But I've had so many people tell me that they just love the audiobook. And it's a fast pace, like you said, it's a fast paced read. I get bored really quickly. I mean, my focus is just like, if something doesn't grab me, I'm just on to the next thing. And so one of my biggest goals writing the book was to like not be boring, like I wanted to keep people from going, I'm bored, put it down, So there was an effort put into that. It sounds like it worked with you.
Oh, like I said, I crushed 71 pages, and normally I'm a person who gets like through maybe 2 or 3 chapters and then needs to go like take a nap, and it was like, oh no, it was like 1 o'clock at night, and I'm like 71 pages in. I'm like, oh wow.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm the same way. I used to just read so much, and now I get, maybe because I'm just tired. My eyes are tired from looking at screens and phones all day. And I don't usually have time to read until it's bedtime, and I'm tired, and my eyes are tired. So I get you.
Understandable. All right, last question. So, you mentioned your daughter earlier. So, what has her reception been like to watching you move forward as you write this book, open up, be honest, and to see that you continue to be an inspiration to so many different people?
She went through her own journey with it. She was, gosh, 14 years old when I started the book, and was a little freaked out that I was doing. Why would you do that? Why would anybody do that? And she said some interesting things. I even wrote about it in my introduction. Like, she was like, why are you doing this? And as she got older, she didn't pay as much of attention, but when it was actually coming out, she kind of got worried again, because she knew it had some, that it was very revealing, and it was very brutally honest and open. And I think she was worried about people talking about me or talking about her. That's a normal teenage thing. But I don't know what it was. She didn't actually read it, but one day she said, I picked up the book and I looked at different parts, and it's really good, and I'm really proud of you. And that kind of was like really nice. And then some of her friends' moms started calling me or sending me little cards saying that they loved it. And these are like moms that are not like me at all, like, not moms in bands. So when like regular suburban, mom isn't appalled, and likes it, I think that made her feel like proud,
Oh,
So
that's awesome. That's awesome. I love to hear that. And hopefully she continues to be incredibly proud of her very storied and continuing to achieve many things mother.
I hope so. I'm proud of her, and kind of a mutual admiration thing we have going.
Well, I like to hear that. I definitely like to hear that. All right, Kathy, thank you
Thank you.
very much for taking the time to join me today to take us behind this incredible read, All I Ever Wanted.
I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope your listeners liked our combo.
It's a sordid affair, began in a blackout. The clouds parted, the sun found me in those vanished hours. Still in the game, I'm a tearaway, ricochet. Wake up in dreamland, do it the right way. Yeah, I'm in the game, I still got a shot. Gonna go from the bottom all the way to the top. The road to nowhere. Buzz, buzz, yeah, we're queen bees, baby. Do it the right
the Desert Tiger Podcast.